I'm going to preface this video with a disclaimer. I'm not a lawyer, nor am I trying to provide you with legal advice. I'm an engineer who likes to know technical definitions, and I implore you to perform your own research for more clarity. My intent is to provide you with enough information to want to join the conversation of firearms and at least have some food for thought. I hope this video teaches you something new. Guns. Everyone's got an opinion on them. Some don't like them, some love them, and others want to cover the world in red tape and fine print. Personally,
I just think they're neat.
But I'm not here to sell you on them. I'm here to let you in on some of the legal limbo that exists in the world of firearm ownership today. Let's start by establishing some common vocabulary. Alright class, to make sure we understand today's lesson, we need to be speaking the same language. First off, guns versus firearms. In conversation, these words are often used interchangeably. But if you ever find yourself hearing legalese on the law firm side of YouTube, the word of choice is going to be firearm. Firearm.
Firearm.
Firearm.
Firearms.
I wasn't much a fan of Merriam-Webster's definition for these words, so instead I'm providing this answer I like from the Bullet Points Project. Quote, "The term gun refers to a broad category of devices that propel a projectile, including BB guns, airsoft guns, and paintball guns. A firearm is a type of gun that utilizes an explosive charge, gunpowder, also called a propellant, to fire a projectile." End quote. Now, we can move on from our English semantics and redirect our focus to the anatomy of an AR-15. Whoa, not that in-depth. There, that's better. This is an AR-15. A common misconception is that the AR in AR-15 stands for assault rifle. Though assault rifle is an actual term, it's not the name or classification of the rifle on screen. The letters AR stand for ArmaLite rifle. ArmaLite is the company that designed this firearm. The AR-15 has become such a popular platform that its name has become synonymous with what it is, a modern sporting rifle. Similar to how the brand name Kleenex is used instead of the words facial tissues. Now, let me slap this clown of a paint job on and separate these parts out, elementary style.
Nice.
Before we begin naming and identifying parts, here's a question. Which of these parts is the AR-15? I swear there's an answer. Got your answer? Well, you're correct if you chose this one, the lower receiver. Why? Well, federal law states, quote, "Licensed manufacturers and licensed importers of firearms must legibly identify each firearm they manufacture or import," end quote. This means that every firearm introduced into the US, either by manufacturing or importation, is required by law to have a serial number. How is this relevant? Well, for an AR-15, this is the part that gets serialized. Though legally this is the AR-15, functionally it's just the lower receiver. So let's start adding some parts until we can get to what we refer to as an AR-15. Nope, still not doing that. We'll be starting with just a lower receiver. Let's add a pistol grip so we have something to hold. Now a few metal bits being the end plate and castle nut, which don't actually float like this during assembly. The end plate loosely fits around and the castle nut screws onto the next part, which is the buffer tube. On the buffer tube, we can mount our stock, and what we have here is called a complete lower receiver assembly for the AR-15. I would also like to note, this is where you can really see the importance of defining parts by a technical name. This part alone is referred to as a stock in a modern sporting rifle, but how does it compare to an older sporting rifle? See for yourself. I'm not sure what model weapon this stock belongs to, so I can't be super confident on the scale of it, but nonetheless, it's a good representation of how definitions have to adapt or expand over time. But back to our complete AR-15 lower. We need to add an upper receiver for the other half of the firearm's functionality, and then a barrel and a handguard so we don't burn our hands. In addition to offering ventilation for cooling a hot barrel, the holes on the handguard allow for the attachment of accessories, which we'll cover shortly. Before then, our final part, a muzzle device. Now that we've got our muzzle device, we can add the rest of our accessories. First, we need an optic so we can aim, and maybe a vertical grip on our handguard to make it nice to hold. Now we can add our magazine, and we're ready to go shoot our AR-15. This is the point in the video where I can explain what I meant by legal limbo. You see, what we have here is an AR-15 in a rifle configuration. But if we remove the complete upper receiver and all of its accessories, and then we add a complete upper receiver with a barrel shorter than 16 inches, what do we have? A short-barreled rifle, or SBR for short. I swear I'm not pulling your leg. This is a buzzword, so remember it. We'll be using it from here forward. Now let's take the stock off. What do we have? A pistol. That's right, this configuration is classified as a pistol. What's a pistol? Well, according to the US Code and the Code of Federal Regulations, a pistol is a weapon that was designed, made, and intended to fire a projectile from one or more barrels when held in one hand. There's a couple of bullet points here, but I haven't done much research on how these came to be, so I can't say much on them besides reiterating them word for word. However, I can say about the second bullet point that what we refer to as a pistol grip is defined in legalese here as a short stock designed to be gripped by one hand at an angle to and extending below the line of the bore. I should briefly explain what a bore is. So, a bore is the inside surface of a barrel. This bore can either be smooth like a tube or has these grooves called rifling. Rifling puts a spin on the bullet, causing it to spiral through the air like a football, which stabilizes it. There's some interesting physics and mechanics to this, so if you want me to cover that, then go ahead and leave a comment below. While we're at it, let's go ahead and see their definition of a rifle. Now, as an engineer, let me break it down for you. What it says is that a rifle is a weapon that is designed to be shouldered and fires one bullet through a rifle barrel with a single pull of the trigger. Perfect. Now there's nothing else we have to worry about, right?
Wrong.
There's more regulation about classifying rifles by barrel length. Though I could cover this info verbatim, I decided to boil it down to a few bullet points and turn those into a flowchart. This flowchart simplifies a lot of things, so again, make sure you do your own research. Let's start with these two. Though they have different buffer tubes, these both follow the same path in the flowchart. They've got a rifled barrel, no stock, no vertical foregrip, so they're both pistols. But if we took one of those guys and added a vertical foregrip to it, and let's assume that all the shorter barrels bring it under 26 inches overall, then it falls into this category where it's considered an AOW, or any other weapon. We've got quite a few to go through, so I'll explain a bit more later for the configurations that need it. Alright, we're assuming rifled barrel, no stock, no vertical foregrip. Regardless of the barrel length, this one's a pistol. Another rifled barrel, and a stock? No, don't get fooled here, that's a pistol brace. You can tell it's a pistol brace by the black Velcro band on it. But now we've got a foregrip. Because the ATF says that a pistol brace is an accessory and doesn't contribute to the overall length, we need to make sure that we measure it from the end of the barrel to the buffer tube. For the sake of having an example, let's say that this measures just over 26 inches overall. It would then classify as a firearm. On to the next one. Well, this one's odd. If you can't tell by looking at it, this is a shotgun. And because most shotguns aren't rifled, we're going to say that it's not subject to this list. These two have rifled barrels, they don't have stocks. Though one of them has a foregrip, it's not vertical, it's angled. So they're both still just pistols. If that one previous one did have a vertical foregrip, and it measured under 26 inches in length overall, it would classify as an AOW. Now these, like the last pair, have a rifled barrel, no stock, no vertical foregrip, and despite their barrel length, they're both pistols. Only two more left. We've got a rifled barrel. This one does have a stock, so it's a rifle. But is its barrel length less than 16 inches? We're saying no, still just a rifle. Last one. Rifled barrel, has a stock, barrel length, looks shorter than 16 inches, so we've got a short-barreled rifle. And if you've been wondering why two of the flowchart outcomes are red, they're felonies.
Right to jail, right away.
Well, not if you pay off the ATF. I'm not kidding. If you want to have your AR-15 in an SBR or AOW configuration, you need to pay the ATF $200 for this thing called a tax stamp. What is a tax stamp? A tax stamp essentially says, here's proof that I paid the $200 federal tax for this specific weapon and have the serial number registered with the ATF as an NFA item. If you're curious, this money gets deposited into the US Treasury Fund. But regarding the National Firearms Act, there's a lot of history here that I'm definitely not the best source of information for, so instead, I've paraphrased a statement written by the Department of Justice, Office of the Inspector General. Quote, on June 26, 1934, Congress passed the National Firearms Act, or NFA, which has since been amended to limit the availability of machine guns, short-barreled shotguns, short-barreled rifles, sound suppressors, or silencers, and other similar weapons that were often used by criminals during the Prohibition era. End quote. There's also some extra details in their footnotes that I don't want to leave out for those that are curious. Manufacturers, importers, and dealers must pay a special occupational tax, or SOT, to do business in NFA weapons and are licensed as special occupational taxpayers, where dealers are taxed $500 annually, manufacturers and importers are taxed $1,000 annually, and applicants must pay the $200 tax each time they make or transfer an NFA weapon. And there you have it. The taxman's okay with it as long as you pay up. So what's the problem? If you don't want to pay the tax, just set up your AR differently, right? Well, that's where I want to bring you back to this guy. Remember him? He's obviously a pistol. That's legal. No problem. Until, of course, we introduce this legal thing called constructive possession. To put it simply, hey guys, Grapes from the future here. I'm currently editing this and realizing that I never actually explained how constructive possession applies here. So let's say you have an AR-15 with a stock, right? And then you upgraded it, or like you changed that stock to something else because, I don't know, you want to customize it, right? And then you bought an AR pistol like this one on screen, but you still have that other stock laying around. Well, because you have that stock laying around and no other weapon to put it on, then constructive possession applies here because you have possession over that stock and you have the ability to apply it onto this pistol, which would then classify it as an SBR, right? So constructive possession applies here because you could make an SBR. If you physically have access to the materials or items required to make, assemble, or do something that's illegal, it's constructive possession, even if you didn't have the intent of doing so. It's like having a Lego set that's illegal to build unless you pay more money. Just having it opens the door for someone to ask, what are you going to do? Not build that Lego set? But I digress. Let me wrap up some of the loose ends before I end the video. First off, I mentioned earlier that the term assault rifle is an actual term, but try not to get it confused with assault weapon, as they're not interchangeable. The term assault weapon is more of a political scare tactic than it is a technical term. So when can we say something is an assault rifle? Luckily, a pretty well-known gun tuber has done this work for me, and I can just restate it. The technical definition of an assault rifle is a shouldered fire rifle with 3 elements. It's capable of fully automatic fire, which includes any type of burst that fires more than a single bullet per pull of the trigger. It makes use of detachable magazines, and it is chambered for an intermediate cartridge. Secondly, what's considered to be any other weapon? As per the ATF and the purposes of the NFA, the term any other weapon means any weapon or device capable of being concealed on a person from which a shot can be discharged through the energy of an explosive. A pistol or revolver having a barrel with a smooth bore designed or redesigned to fire a fixed shotgun shell. Weapons with combination shotgun and rifle barrels 12 inches or more, less than 18 inches in overall length, from which only a single discharge can be made from either barrel without manually reloading. And any such weapon which may be readily restored to fire. But this term doesn't include a pistol or revolver having a rifled bore, or rifled bores, or weapons designed, made, or intended to be fired from the shoulder and not capable of firing fixed ammunition. If you got lost here, I'm guessing it was because of the mention of a combination. A combination gun is a firearm that has at least 2 barrels which fire different cartridges. So this doesn't include any multi-barrel pirate guns, but if you want to learn about those, I got a link in the description. Where I got lost was at the end with the mention that a pistol doesn't count as an AOW. What about the situation we talked about with the vertical grip? Because this statement was last reviewed on September 13th of 2017, I decided to Google it rather than navigate the ATF's website. Sure enough, I found an answer that was last reviewed January 23rd of 2020. The question is, am I required to register my pistol if I want to put a vertical foregrip on it? Their answer? The firearm must be registered because the ATF said so. It's 3 in the morning. I looked up the code. It's the 2017 statement. There's no progress in 3 years. Just they said so do it. This matches what we've been saying this whole video, so luckily I don't have to go back and redo anything.
This is an
AOW.
You can tell that it's an
AOW.
because of the way it is. Wow.
During my research, I had found something that baffled me so much, I had to go back down this rabbit hole to make sure I knew what an AOW was. This thing. Franklin Armory's CA-12. It's an AR pistol with a 12-inch barrel. It takes a .350 Legend cartridge. It has a pistol buffer tube. It uses detachable 10-round magazines, and it comes with a vertical grip. I was shocked that California, which is a notoriously restrictive state when it comes to firearms, would allow this thing. How or why? Well, I looked at the product description and found that it's not semi-automatic, it's a bolt action. which means that after every shot, you have to manually take the casing out of the chamber and chamber another cartridge. All this confusion and explanation brings me to my third and final point. Do your own research and stay informed. If you didn't previously notice, the ATF has had to clarify their definitions quite a bit. Surely it's because technology advances, right? Not exactly. Just recently, a pistol brace on a pistol configuration would have made you a felon. This is fairly recent, so even I'm keeping an ear out for it. Or also, remember this thing called a bump stock? Well, back in 2018, the Department of Justice amended ATF regulations, which then classified the accessory itself as a machine gun, which, under the NFA, would be unlawful to make without coughing up the money. So to give time for those who purchased a bump stock to turn them in or dispose of them, the rule would go into effect 90 days after it was amended, March 26 of 2019. Otherwise, they would be committing a felony for possessing it, even if it wasn't on their weapon. Recently, the Supreme Court struck down that ruling made by the Department of Justice, so bump stocks are no longer considered to be machine guns. But this change wasn't exactly made with technical definitions and functionality in mind. It was more so about the ATF overstepping its authority regarding the Second Amendment. Just because we know the mechanical function and technical definitions to classify something, doesn't mean that those who make and interpret the law all do. Hence, legal limbo. You can only go under the bar if you know where the bar is at. And of course, this is still all at the federal level. Each state has its own ability to rule differently on firearms with such things as open and concealed carry, attachments, and so on. Anyhow, I know I've said a lot of things, but if you learn anything, make sure you let me know with a comment. If you want to learn more about firearms or check out some of the sources I used when making this video, I've added the links in the description. Thank you for watching my first episode of Medley. Welcome to the Grapevine.